Welcome everyone. A special welcome to our panelists and also all of you who have joined us today on Zoom. As everyone probably knows, this is a rescheduled Family Business Day. We normally have a full half day in April, and we of course couldn't do that this year. So we're joining you virtually because we didn't want to skip it altogether. We have great panelists here. I'm going to introduce them in a moment. I think everyone is on board with the housekeeping. To all our participants, attendees, just have your video off and your microphone muted. And if you want to be able to only see our squares, there's a setting that you can choose, hide non-video participants, and then you'll only see the panelists and me instead of all those boxes with just a blank box with someone's name on it. So Family Business Day is always an opportunity to hear from other family businesses in the region, learn about how they're doing things, maybe hear some new things, get some validation on the way you're doing things. And we're very lucky today to have Helen Hanna Casey here with us and Charlie Bitzer. Don Williams, our third panelist, has been held up, and so hopefully he'll be able to join us shortly. But I'm going to read some brief bios for all three panelists. So when Don joins us, you'll know a little bit about him as well. They all have impressive bios. Oh, Don is here. Okay, wonderful. They all have very impressive bios, and I'm only going to highlight some of their accomplishments here today. Charlie Bitzer is the CEO and a member of the third generation owning family of ABARTA. ABARTA Coca-Cola Beverages is the 10th largest Coca-Cola distributor in the United States. Charlie currently is the president of the board of governors of the Coca-Cola Bottlers Association. And he's been recently honored as one of the Smart 50 in Pittsburgh, recognizing innovation, impact, and sustainability. The ABARTA owning family has been members of the IEE since the founding of the Family Enterprise Center back in 1996. Thanks for joining us today, Charlie. Helen Hanna Casey is the Chief Executive Officer, sorry, Helen, of Howard Hanna Real Estate Services, the largest family-owned real estate company in the United States. Helen has received many recognitions and was recently honored with the 2019 Women of Influence Career Achievement Award from the Pittsburgh Business Times. She currently serves as chair of the National Association of Realtors Corporate Ally Program Advisory Board and is a member of the Allegheny Conference on Community Development Executive Committee and chair of its Strategic Communications Committee. The Howard Hanna owning family also has been members of the IEE since the founding of the Family Enterprise Center in 1996. And the family was recognized in 2016 by the Pittsburgh Business Times as a Family Business of the Year. Thanks, Helen, for being here. Don Williams is a serial entrepreneur and family business owner. He sold his steel manufacturing company almost a decade ago after leading it to over a $57 million increase in sales. Being a true entrepreneur, he then founded Weatherspoon Williams with his daughter, Brandy Weatherspoon. WW LLC has grown into a major minority-owned general contractor supplier. Don attended the Georgia Power Mentoring Program for Diversity and Inclusion and recently participated in the Entrepreneurial Fellows Program at the IEE, which he credits with helping lead his company to a 15% profit margin increase. Don also attributes his success to his education in the School of Hard Knocks. Thank you, Don, for joining us today. Okay. So I'm going to start off with the questions for the panelists. I want to encourage everyone who is attending to put questions in the chat. One of the great portions of our Family Business Day is also some interaction with the assembled group. So please feel free to put questions in the chat. We have some time for those at the end. And then also, as you hopefully all saw from the opening slide, we will have some breakout sessions so that you have a chance to interact and have some good conversations with your fellow IEE members. We know that's always a highlight of our programs together. And since we haven't been getting together in person, we wanted to try and replicate a little bit of that for you today. So Charlie, my first question is for you. In mid to late February, you started hearing about a possible pandemic. You and your leadership team got together to talk about what the company's approach should be. Can you share a little bit about what those conversations looked like in those early days?
Sure. Well, it was interesting because we as a leadership team, we try to look outside ourselves and find signals in the marketplace, in the world, things that would impact us. And we try to separate relevant, real signals from the noise. And I guess it was late January, early February. We were hearing about this pandemic. We were hearing about Wuhan. And I just sent out an email to our staff leadership team. There's 5 of us. And I said, is this a signal or is this noise? And so we were meeting about every other week anyway, and we put that on the agenda, and we got together as a leadership team, and half of us said, this is real, this is a threat, this is could have a huge impact on our business, and the other half said, well, it's no different than the flu, I'm not going to worry about it, won't have an impact. And so we had that debate, and we said, well, let's give it a week, think about it, reconvene, let's talk about it again. And we set up a meeting a week later, and it was basically the same discussion. We couldn't really find consensus whether this was a real signal, a real threat, or whether it was just going to be some passing virus. And if you remember back then, there was conflicting information. It was, some of it was politicized, and so it was really hard to come to any conclusion. So we decided, we met again, and we said, let's bring in some more people. We brought in our people that had local contact with health agencies, people that had connections with the CDC or monitored things coming out of the CDC. We brought in our HR people, our safety people, and the group grew. But the discussion was the same. But we were getting more information. And so finally, in one of the meetings, the end of February, our president of our division said, you know what, I would rather be conservative about this and take it very seriously and be wrong than to not take it seriously enough and be wrong. And that really unified all of us around that concept. And so we said, all right, let's take this as if it's going to be very, very serious. And we really went into survival mode and said, this could be extremely severe, could last a long time. And really the first week of March, we started preparing for the worst. And we had 3 priorities going into that. And that was, 1, the health and safety of our associates was number 1. And if we have any customers out there, I apologize, but their safety was more important than our customer service. And the other was preserve cash. We cut our capital, we eliminated all discretionary spending. It was all about cash preservation. And the third was communication to our people and our organization. And to the point where I was, in Dallas doing videos, communicating with the organization about our stance. And we turned out to be ahead of the curve, and that benefited us a lot. And it did turn out to be serious. Again, if you remember back then, things were happening fast. So my chronology may be off, but there were some predictions of 2 million deaths, and there are other predictions that this is just going to pass. And what do you believe? What's real? And because we acted early, because we took a conservative approach, because we did hope for the best but prepare for the worst, we were ahead of the curve, and I think our associates appreciated that. You know, I think in the first 4 months we had about 5 cases out of 1,600 people, which we were pretty proud of. So that's kind of the debate. We're all kind of glad we did that, and we ramped everything up from there, really, with those 3 priorities in mind. And we knew. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was going to say, we knew that we were going to have to make a lot of decisions very quickly and communicate them very quickly, and that's how we were going to get through it.
Good. And we'll be able to get back to that shortly. Thank you, Charlie. I have a question for Helen. Helen, I know that you operate in several different states, and in those different states, in the early days, you were subject to different regulations. So that sounds like a lot of stuff happening. What was that like for you and your team, and how did you approach that uncertainty as a leadership team?
I would have to start with, as a family business, I would say that the last 3 weeks in March and the first and all of April into May were some of the hardest times we have ever been through individually, because you had to make so many decisions that would affect people's lives. And it wasn't, you had the state regulations, and then you also had your state leaders and your regional leaders saying to you, well, it's not going to happen here. All right. So if I use that, we're in 11 different states. If you use the state of New York, which was the hardest hit by it, okay, our Albany and Syracuse markets were less affected, meaning downturn wise, than our Rochester and Buffalo markets were, and our Erie market. That had a lot to do with people's mental states, their local regulations, their local boards. So we were dealing with not only the state regulations, all right, and the national message, we were also dealing with all of these local messages. And so you had 350 locations, each telling you what they wanted. So, and we also have, 12,000 of the people that are with us, or of the 12,000 people,
Helen, we lost your audio.
can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm not sure what happened.
Okay.
But that's all right. So anyway, but what I think we found was that our team pulled together so much. And so in late February, we started late February, all of our ancillary services, our back of the house, started having people work from home on shifts each week to see how it would work for us if we had. Now I'm getting reverberation. Something happened when I got shut on mute. I'm sorry. I don't think that's coming from my end, but it might be.
We can hear you. Okay.
Okay. Anyway, but it was amazing to me how we did get all of these people to pull together. And that started with our HR department, who was phenomenal. And we thought on the day we were shut down, our first shutdown was schools in Ohio shut down, which was our first concern because we have so many people with young kids that, and so that was our first concern, was our own internal people and how they were going to manage. And from there, it just was like rapid fire after that. But as I said, our HR department was just so amazing at managing this process with us. And really, for those first 3 weeks, we were at our desks every day with them, looking at what the processes were going to do, making decisions on people, making decisions internally. We weren't eligible for any federal funding or state funding. So we knew that pretty early on. But we also knew that for the first time ever, our sales associates could get unemployment compensation, which was a total learning curve for them. So it was a whole separate thing that we had to do, which most companies didn't have to deal with, is that we had to teach our sales associates how to apply for unemployment compensation in a way that they didn't know how to do. So we had accountants and we had attorneys all working with them on the phone 5 sessions a day, every day for a week, to give them a competitive edge to get it done. And then you had to deal with your own employees, their fear, the people that just left work. We had people that just refused to come to work, even though we were still open. We had essential markets, we had essential businesses. So I think that complicated things. And that's why those couple of months were so difficult, that we were allowed to close properties. We had to close properties, meaning that people wanted to transfer their title. And as much as we can think you can do online, the banks still don't allow you to get a mortgage and close online. You can't sign on. People are amazed at this, that we can do the whole process. That for closings, which we did, we put up tents and we had closings in tents outside so that people could drive through. So a lot of those processes that we thought we were so good at, that I think held us well. And quite honestly, we will have our best year ever by the end of the year, if things hold the next 3 weeks. So I think what we did was tough, but good.
Thank you, Helen. Don, welcome. Good to see
Hi.
you this
How are
morning.
you? I had a little technical problems this morning, but
That's okay. It happens.
I made it.
Sign of the times. We're glad you're here.
Yes.
So for you, a couple questions to start off. One is, how has Weatherspoon and Williams managed during the pandemic? And part two of that question is, when we spoke, you told me your next generation had been encouraging some modernization prior to the pandemic, and talk a little bit about that and how that may have helped you.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for having me be part of the panel of the very distinguished people on the panel. I think that Weatherspoon and Williams had a little bit different experience. We have about 12 employees. So some of that had to do with some real education into what was going on, to get everyone to really believe, and even still now that's going on, to really believe that there is a problem is important. So, the first thing that was really a challenge was to understand what the problem was. You never can fix a problem unless you know what it is. And I think that's been the challenge throughout the nation. Fortunately, in February, my granddaughter was performing at Disney, and we all went on a plane fully masked. My wife had all kind of disinfects and everything. People were looking at us like we were crazy, but we all know now it was coming, and that we had just been a little bit ahead of the curve. But we're fortunate. We're in the steel business, and in the steel business, we were deemed, the factories, all my factories were deemed essential workers. So we literally worked from home starting in February all the way through to the now. Even now, we're working from home. And fortunately, and I feel very bad for those people that had to actually shut down, like restaurants, etc. But we have worked every day through this crucial time. So fortunately, as you just said, back in December or so, my succession plan, and Charlie's worked with me on this, my succession plan was to take my daughter, my granddaughter, my nephew, all those people, and try to pass on to them what my dad has passed on to me, in that it starts with generational succession plans. So we had began to modernize and come up to year 2021. I'm an old businessman. I'm the guy that goes out and say, hello, my name is Don Williams, and shake hands and do all that. And we know now that that's gone. We can't do how I used to do. And luckily they had established or began to establish ways to market, ways to contact customers, vendors, everything electronically. And we had modernized. So by the time January, February come, we were very well set on, we had GoToMeeting and all those things before Zoom got real popular. So we were going that way because they were taking me out of my 1999 approach to business into approaching business in the modern way. And I think that myself and the panelists can verify that business will never be like it used to be. You know, we have to adapt, and we began the process of adapting business to the new way of, to what I guess they call the new norm. So we were fortunate, we've been fortunate. We've made some great progress during this time. Excuse me. In fact, we've used some of the time at home and the time that this has allowed us to make some real gains. And I think that it would be, it's unfortunate where we're at, but as a small business person in the steel industry, we've made some real gains. In fact, just like Helen said, we've had our best year this year. I think that once we get this under control, I think that, you know, we will go much further, and we've gotten further through the pandemic. So the good story for us is that we've come out of very strong, and we think that we're technically ready to go into the next phase of business.
Wonderful, thank you. Helen, and so what did you and your business, what did you have in place already that has helped you weather this year, and especially the early days and the transitions you had to make?
I think a couple of the things that were key to what we did in the beginning were we had so much technology which was underused. I can remember on March 10th, I know the exact date, when I'm talking about learning how to do Zoom, and I find out that we have whole levels of our company that are using Microsoft Teams effectively. I can go in and get a record on any facility meeting that you have. I can go and get things on accounting, but I didn't know that. And I can tell you none of our senior administrative staff knew it. And we're in this meeting, and we have people that have worked for us for a very long time that I thought they were going to go into tears, that they had to learn this new program. We had so many, but back of the house systems, but also marketing systems. So it required so much communication, but where we believed we were 45 to 50% ready, we were actually 80% ready for this. We just didn't realize it. So we had to go out and buy a lot of laptops for people. We had to go buy hardware, but the software was sitting there in place to send people at home and have them work. So right. I think that all of us, and I say every level of it, and it goes back to what Don is saying, we mastered these things. And I like to say that we are better prepared for 2021 than we were for any previous year, because we have had to master it. And I think key to that was communications, that it's always difficult to communicate. It doesn't matter if you have 8 people, 80 people, or 8,000, it's difficult to communicate. And so we found we had to over communicate and just train and train and train. We had to make it soft training. We had to make it structured training. But I would say by June, when we were back at full force, when we were everywhere, because some markets we were essential, but we still couldn't show houses. Other markets we were non-essential, we couldn't show houses. It didn't make much difference. I mean, we have offices in Michigan, which we all know because they were on TV every day, the worst place in the world to be. But I think when you look at that, it was that training that we got people engaged in. It was sessions like we're having this morning that we had on a regular basis that I think enabled our team to start using what their capabilities were, and to learn things that we haven't learned before. And that's every day that goes on. I would say one thing, as a family business, we worked hard to communicate from all levels, meaning our state levels, our regional levels, our training department, but also as a family. And even this week that continues. So this week, the next generation of our family, Gen 3, as they call themselves, Gen 3 has a call open to the entire company, to everybody. And it's just Gen 3. And they'll answer anything that you send into them beforehand. So we'll see how that goes. But that's just them. We can come in and listen, but we've also had sessions because at the same time you're hiring new managers, you're hiring new people in IT. So we've had sessions which are just for new managers to meet the Hannas, just for new employees to meet the Hannas. So I think that communication is something that we have learned to do different ways. And we just we have to be careful now that we don't rely on Zoom too much, and that we look at other ways to communicate as well as Zoom or Teams.
Great, thank you. Charlie, can you tell us about the COVID-19 task force and what that group was tasked with initially and how it has evolved over the past 8 or 9 months?
Yeah, when we recognized that this was going to be serious and we took it seriously, we knew the communication would be key. So we identified, and our goal on the communication side was how do we communicate all the way down to the frontline personnel, because we knew we were going to be making decisions very quickly. New information was going to be gathered, and we wanted to disseminate that as quickly as possible. So we assembled, it was about 35 managers throughout the company, all levels. And we knew that if this group, maybe it was 40, if this group was part of the decision-making process, that those decisions could be communicated daily to our frontline people. And their task was really to navigate the organization through this uncertainty with the pandemic. And we started out with daily calls. I think, Helen, you said that. It was daily calls. And, new information at the beginning of the call, decisions being made on the call, debates about how to handle it. Again, from the frontline people who are executing every day to the corporate staff who were trying to develop policies and procedures. And it was actually phenomenal. And we had some heated debates about what to do and how to do it. But we came out early on with a sick leave policy, that gave our associates 14 days if they tested positive. How we were going to handle the warehouses in terms of personnel and working from home, and just dealing with 1,000 little decisions that make collectively make a big deal. And we got through it. It was hard. Like Helen said, we had people that just refused to show up to work. Well, what do we do with those people? How do we handle them? How are we consistent across the board? How do we get that consistency communicated to everyone, and agreeing on how we ought to handle it? And the discussion was great. I'd say the daily calls started out about 2 hours long, sometimes 2.5 hours. And we'd work through it. If we didn't get a conclusion, we put it on the agenda for the next day. What information can we get to make a better decision tomorrow than we can make today? And people were tasked, to get that information. And it was like that. Seems like forever, but for weeks and weeks and weeks. And and we got efficient at it. And the 2.5 hours turned into 2 hours. The 2 hours turned into an hour and a half, and eventually we got it down to an hour. But that was critical, and the communication was critical. And we actually did a post-COVID survey with our associates, and they gave us very high marks on communication, and we knew that was going to be critical. So it worked.
And can you talk about, so the task force was meeting daily. Is it still meeting?
It is. And interesting you should say that. As things calmed down during the summer, as we made a lot of the decisions and fewer decisions needed to be made, we went from, every day for an hour to 3 days a week for an hour to 1 day a week for an hour. And then we actually got to every other week. And that's when the resurgence hit. As Helen said, we're dealing with new issues, new challenges. And so we've cranked it back up to every week as we deal with this resurgence. And so that's kind of where we are today. If we have to go back to every day, we will. But at this point, we haven't had to.
Helen, you work along with your sister and your brother and then other family leaders in Gen 3. How did you divide up the sort of the responsibilities and decision-making and tasks among the leadership team and among the family?
Well, I should start by saying that we have defined roles. My brother is now the chairman. He has always been the company front leader and remains that. I am the CEO of all operations, which means that's everything from our mortgage, our insurance, our title, little divisions, property management, all of those come under that heading, rentals. So it's a big operation. And fortunately, I have a lot of team under me. And then 3 of the next generation are presidents of various divisions. So everybody was involved. We jokingly say my brother was in Florida, so he was okay. My sister has always been, her title is now COO, but Annie has always been the back of the house. And so people don't know her as much. And so she really led the charge on this. And she took the major brunt of it because HR reports to her, accounting reports to her, all of those systems report to her. And as a result of that, she was the one that led the charge. She was in charge of I don't think we call it a COVID task force, but she really drove that with us making decisions along with it, with spreadsheets, et cetera. So I think we divided as we did. So my daughter is our chief legal counsel and chair and president of our insurance division. So she had very specific roles that she had to deal with. I have a nephew who's president of our core services, which is financial services of mortgage, title, and the banking issues. And he had to deal with those through her. That step was in there. And then I have another nephew that is president of all of our brokerage arms. Now, they're in different locations, but they were all part of that dealing with theirs. But in the end, the decisions were ours, and the hard decisions were ours in the end. So, fortunately, the hard decisions were done quickly, and we could move from there. So that was an internal driving force of how we structure always. We used to have a weekly executive committee meeting, which is our family and our CFO and other people that are a chairman of mortgage, et cetera. But, and we had long gone to having that, once a month, and then having the other divisions have their meetings. But during this, our executive committee meeting, we upped those meetings also to twice a month so that we could be on the same track. But I can't stress enough how everyone, really everybody did their responsible actions to follow up on the decisions that were made, or made those decisions and gave them to us for approval. And I think that's important, as I said, because they're doing very different jobs.
Right. So the structure that you already have in place and the defined roles really helped you because everyone really knew what their marching orders were.
I think that's very important in a family business. And if I can just add about the Institute, I think since we have been members for a very long time, my brother and sister and I were very involved. And I don't think our company would be where we are today without it, by the way. And I think that's one of those things you learned in a family business. You can't all have the same title. You can't all have the same job. All right. And you have to find a way not to step on each other's toes. And and I think a lot of that came from that, as we saw that, because we saw both kinds. We saw very successful businesses that could divide up, and we saw very non-successful businesses that really, that was the major issue. So I just like to point that out because it is a plug to all of you, as I said earlier, that we have learned so much from it, but that is a part of it, is that you have to have those defined roles all the time, not just an emergency status.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you, Helen. That's something that I definitely work with families on, knowing roles and responsibilities and where one ends and the next person's begins. Don, your team is smaller than Helen's and Charlie's, but communication, as we've been discussing, is important no matter what the size of the team and how many people we need to reach. So how have you kept the communication flowing to all your members, some of whom might be out running projects, some who might be working from home? How does that look in Weatherspoon and Williams?
Well, as both Helen and Charlie were talking, I was relating to everything they were saying because, as they both indicated, no matter what the size of the business, communication is very important. As I groom the next generation, I reached back to my mother. I don't know about you guys, but my parents got real smart after I got older because everything they've been trying to tell me, I finally say, hey, you guys are pretty smart. But my mother had a saying, and her saying is, when the ox is in the ditch, everybody pulls on the rope together. And during this very vital time, it's very important, especially as you're my size of business, that everybody has their role and everybody pulls in the correct direction. So it's important to identify which way are we going? What does it look like? How does it look? In fact, right now, we have in place all our plans for 2021. But I go back to some of the things that I've learned through my business experience, my father's business experience, and if you came into my daughter's garage, it's really funny. I have everybody's picture from my great grandmother all the way through. And one of my goals is to try to take some of those sayings and some of those ideas that were fundamental in how we have achieved our upper mobility and bring them into this family. So as Helen said, my daughter's HR, my wife is the controller, my nephew is the manager of sales, and on and on and on. But those definitive roles, even though they have less people under them, and et cetera, it's exactly what my two panelists have been talking about. I have another saying. The saying is, it's only the decimal point. And Charlie helped me with this. Charlie was actually my mentor, and he helped me with this. His decimal point is way out different than mine, but the problems and the solutions are the same. It's just a decimal point. So whatever size business you have, wherever you're at, some of the things and some of the basic philosophies that are being talked about this morning apply. And it doesn't matter. It's all the same. Now, as we want to grow, we want to incorporate, in the best fashion, some of these types of things. So that's what we've been doing. It's been working. And those individuals, they know their roles. And in a smaller company, understanding your role and executing it is very important. One of my things that I talk to them about, I say, if I give you the responsibility, the authority, and the resources, there's only one answer that I want when you come back. It's done. Because those three things, no matter if you're a gigantic business or a little business, those are things that each individual needs to successfully fulfill their role, their responsibility. If they're whatever they are, if we can give you those three things, whatever it takes to give you those three things, success should be the only answer from back. So again, some of those philosophies they talked about, and some of the little sayings from my mother and my dad, they're all the same. It's just a matter of applying them and taking those three things that I said that are most important for each individual and making it work.
Excuse me. Thank you. That's wonderful. And I'm going to stick with you, Dawn, here for a couple of minutes, and we're going to move slightly away from COVID for a bit, and we're going to come back to it before we wrap up. So you've talked a little bit about individuals and giving them the resources they need. And you have a deep, what I feel is one of your deeply held values is respect for individuals. And I'd like you to share a bit how that has informed your approach to business and your thinking about the responsibility to lift people up. Can you share a bit about that, please?
I can. The good news about my participation, in the program, in the mentor program that you guys sponsor, I was the oldest person in that class, and the reason that I went there was because I needed to check in on some of the old ideas I had and be honest, open-minded, and willing to learn. That class was tremendous for me because it gave me a whole new perspective of what I had been doing that I maybe didn't know what it was called. And they had the experts to come in and work with you and tell you what it was. I was doing it, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing it from the gut, from the grinding that me and my dad did, okay? But they gave me a different perspective of even how to approach my employees. You know, I'm in construction, okay? I mean, I don't know if anybody's on the call that's in construction, but in construction, it's pretty rough out there, you know? And people talk to you a little different way in construction than they maybe do in the office. And, you know, when you have a responsibility to, you know, build that wall, you know, you got to build that wall. And it's no fluff and stuff in construction. They just talk to you a certain way. But I realized through the class, hey, you can't talk to people that way these days. You know, you have HR departments and you have way you're supposed to talk to. So it gave me a little polish that I didn't have in relating to, through this communication we're talking about, the individuals that work for us. And I think it was so good. They really appreciate it. I feel better about myself, you know, because I communicate a little different than, you know, it was no ands, ifs, or buts. It's like the old football coaches when they used to slap you around and tell you, you know, go block somebody. You don't do that anymore. So it was great. And I've been able to evolve in my, what I call my second career, because I already retired but retirement wasn't good for me. You know, love my wife to death, but I couldn't stay here all day, every day, you know. So I had to go back into business. But, you know, again, this time around, which I'm doing, it's much different. And I really understand the respect that I've gained by being able to apply some of the new things I learned in that class. And I really appreciate it. And I always tell you guys and that it was really, really good for me. And, you know, all the young people in that class, they laughed at me sometimes because I was telling them stories about, I'm full of stories. I'm an old guy. I got lots of stories. All the stories about how we got to be successful and where we're at right now and what we came through, you know, through the times of business where minority business and small family businesses didn't necessarily have the opportunities that we have today.
Thank you. And you shared a story with me about how you feel it's important to sort of give a hand up, or not give a hand out, but give a hand up. And you shared a story with me about how you were able to give someone an opportunity by encouraging them to do the work. Do you remember what that story was you shared?
Yeah, well, you know, there's a couple of them, you know, and one of them is like the ruler test, okay? And I just had an article in one of the business magazines about it, you know, and my business used to be on Penn Avenue, and behind my Penn Avenue business was all the gangbangers, all the guys that, you know, they didn't work the way we work, you know. And they used to say, Mr. Don, can I get a job? Can I get a job? I say, sure, I can give you a job. What can you do? They would say, well, I'll do anything you want to do. Well, you know, in the sign, at that time I was in the sign business, and reading a ruler was mandatory. So I said, listen, I'll tell you what I'll do, buddy. Can you read a ruler? They said, no. Okay, and that has a lot to do with the societal things that we won't get into here, but they couldn't even read a ruler. Okay, so when a client wants a sign, it has to be 17 inches by 15 and a half. So you got to read a ruler. So we devised a ruler test that we would give to the gangbangers, and we say, look, I guarantee you a job. I'll give you a job tomorrow if you can come back and you can pass the test. And one of my guys who worked for me, they made up the test, and so they come in. Do you have 50? Show me 15 and a half. Show me 12 and 7/8. Show me this. And if they passed, we would take them in and then begin to train them in something that they can then get off the streets selling dope or whatever and begin to work and begin to have the self-esteem. See, that's what everybody misses. Working and being self-sufficient and being able to be a human being in this society is so rewarding, it almost outweighs the money. If I give you $20 an hour, that sometimes does not equate what it feels like to accomplish something. And that's what we try to instill into the people that work for us, is that, hey, man, it's about, we can be proud of ourselves. Charlie knows the story. I had a group of people that worked for me at that same place on Penn Avenue, and we were a band of bandits. I showed them the picture of it. We're a band of bandits, from everybody had a terrible background. But the one goal we set was we want to show the country we're the best company out here. And we were very successful, from the Pittsburgh airport to the Steeler baseball stadium, on and on and on. We were able to show that. And that's the things that we want to instill, because that becomes upper mobility, generational upper mobility. And I think that's one of my real pet things I like to focus on. Everybody around us that works at our business gets to be better. They buy a new car, they get a new house, they get a new this. That's what this is all about.
Thanks, Don. Charlie, switching back to you for a minute, and
Sure.
we're rounding towards the bottom of the hour here, but in June of this year, you wrote a pretty significant memo to all of your associates. Can you share your thinking behind that, and what was the impetus, and what's been happening since then at ABARTA and ACCB?
Yeah. Well, with the racial strife over the summer around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, we got a lot of feedback from our associates that it was very important for us to have a voice on all of these things. And we'd been reluctant in the past, and not wanting to get political, we have a core value of respect for people, and that's all people. But our associates really said, hey, we expect you to take a stand. And the one event that really touched me personally was Ahmaud Arbery. I'm probably pronouncing it incorrectly, but here's a young man in Georgia on a jog, stops in a house that's getting framed to look around, comes out and literally gets hunted down and eventually killed. And the reason I relate to that is my wife and I, walking neighborhoods, have gone into houses being constructed and walked in and looked, and it's just seemed curiosity, but we were never hunted, basically, or threatened. And to me, that just was wrong. And I said, we do have to do something. And I put out a memo that said, this is wrong. This is what we stand for, and this is what we stand against. And it was very heartfelt. I think I represented, our entire family when I wrote it. And it was a communication to all of our associates. And we sent it out and said, part of the memo was, we have a lot to learn about this and why this is, but we want to be part of the solution. And so we sent it out, and the response from the people was amazing. And our associates, we did talk to a lot of our Black American associates and asked them how these events affected them, and what did it mean. And to have one of your associates say, yeah, I have a 21-year-old Black American son, and when he goes out every day, I fear that he won't come home. And that's just wrong. And I talked to a friend of mine who runs a $1.5 billion company, Black American Coca-Cola bottler in Florida, and picked his brain. And he told me a story that he was driving home and he got pulled over by the police. He said, show me some ID. And he showed him his driver's license. And it had his address on it. And the policeman followed him home and knocked on the door and wouldn't let him go in his own house until they checked. And that was just wrong. So anyhow, we sent out this memo. The feedback we got was unbelievable. People said this touched me. I learned that we had people who were discriminated against by our customers. and they wanted to be part of the solution. So we formed a task force, diversity and inclusion. We were very honest with our organization and said, we have a lot to learn. We're going to do this right rather than fast. And to what Don said, we really want to engage with our community, find opportunities that we can give people, I think you said a hand up, not a handout. And our strategy really is, all right, we want to get our own house in order, make sure that our company represents the communities we do business from an employment standpoint. And then we're going to reach out to the communities and try to find ways that we can give people a hand up, not a handout. And it's a journey, and I've said this is a long journey. It's a multi-generational journey, and we're just setting the foundation right now.
Thank you, Charlie. I mean, I think that was very, very heartfelt. That was nice. And, you know, it's the responsibilities on leaders in a lot of way. I know everyone on this panel and probably everyone participating understands that you set the tone for the organization. Your employees look to you to see how you respond to certain things. And thank you for that. And I have another question for Don when he's able to come back. But I want to shift. We're just about out of time. And I think when we got together initially to talk about these topics, it was in September, 3 months ago, which in normal life wouldn't seem like so long ago, but a lot has been happening in our world since then. And so instead of just looking back and at what's going on currently, I'd just like to talk about what it feels like now to look ahead. And all of you actually have referenced 2021, I think, now in your remarks. Sort of what do you see happening, and how do things feel right now looking to the future? Helen, can we start with you, please? And you're on mute.
Taking myself off mute, thank you. Yes, I think right now we are at another crossroads, and we're in the same position that we have all the tools, et cetera, but we also are in a unique position, and that is because we know what we should apply or not apply. I think if we're looking at our businesses right now, you have to look and see whether you believe you're going to be shut down. And if you do not believe you're going to get shut down, you better think about why. So let me just give you some examples. I'm on the Allegheny Conference Board of Directors, and we meet every week with Rick Fitzgerald. We started meeting again. We were doing it during the first 4 months, 5 months into really July, and stopped because, you know, we were all in great shape. We were past this, but we have been meeting again now. And I can tell you in Allegheny County at 1,000 cases a day, we were in problem last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're up to yesterday was 1460 or something. Even Westmoreland, I think, is 450. The numbers of cases are rising, and so are the number of deaths, not in proportion, fortunately. And I know we have a vaccine company coming, but from the conference standpoint, we're looking long and hard about how we stay open, and what we say to the governor, what we say to the county commissioners, what we say to them we can do. And for me, I think this time my company will be okay, meaning the real estate industry will be okay. But I do worry about retail staying open this month. And so right now, to try to do the best we can do to convince people is to go back to what we did last spring and do it better. What I mean by that is we've gone back to, we've all gotten very lax. So we have memos going out now again and every day about mask wearing, sanitizing. You can't enter our buildings. You know, we're required to have people sign. Nobody was doing that by last month. I got to tell you, very few people were. We're back to, you can't get into a building without signing. We have a person that's sitting at the main desk in our main closing center where people go to close to have them sign. We're back at requiring our cleaning companies to go in and do the kind of cleaning they were doing all in the beginning, you know, every day in any conference rooms. And we've got tags up saying this room was used, this room wasn't used, so that we can make sure we're cleaning those down. People had been disregarding using the plastic, you know, these loose site. I don't know. Don's probably in this business too, making these lucite frames that we all had around that we bought, zillions of. But we've got to get people back into that. So I think we as business leaders, no matter what the size of our company is, we have to be responsible for that. I noticed some commercial real estate people on the call today. It's a very tough business right now. It's one of our businesses, and it's going to continue to be tough. And as we lose more people in the buildings they're staying in, it's one of my concerns about retail centers everywhere, no matter what size. How do we keep our retail centers open so that we've got businesses and they're not all shutting down in January? So I think we have to be responsible, but we have to share with other businesses that they have to be responsible also. So that's what we're doing right now, is saying we're back in that mode. We're open, we're at work, but we have to use all of the procedures and use them better than we did. So if you don't have your little sanitizers with your name on them, you can probably not see that from here, but little sanitizers with names on it, and your wipes, they all have to be visibly in front of whatever location you're in, including your own homes. You go to my daughter's, you walk in her house, her hall table has masks, sanitizers, her back door, the same thing. She's got a little table and she's had it the whole time. And I think we have to go back into that mode, a little bit of not fear, but concern that if we want to stay open, it's our responsibility.
The question I was asking was a look ahead to 2021, which some people have referenced. And I'm going to have Charlie answer that in a minute, but I would want to ask you a slightly different question, which is for you to share with others who are on the call. If people who are not minority and don't have a minority-led business or a Black-owned business and who aren't Black, and they haven't had your experiences but want to support the Black community or the minority-owned businesses, do you have suggestions?
Absolutely. I'm very vocal about that subject. And, I have a different interpretation of Black Lives Matter. My interpretation of it is, as many different ethnic groups have done, is to help each other, meaning that, it really makes a difference if I send a proposal to a particular construction company and they happen to be a minority company, is to give me a look, try to give a opportunity. Back in the beginning, all this minority stuff and racial inclusion had nothing to do with giving an advantage. It had to do with giving you an equal opportunity for upward mobility. And that's my thing. So, we don't ask for, and I tell this to younger minority entrepreneurs, you don't go in with your hand out to say, give me something. You want to go out in say, hey, just give me a shot. Let me prove to you that I'm quicker, better, faster. I can give it to you at the right price. I can have it there on time. And that's all that's about. But for all other small or aspiring minority companies, that's what it's all about in 2021. 2021, it's time to show what we can do. I'm fortunate. I have been the beneficiary of all those programs. Some of the doors and some of the places I have been, I was never supposed to be there because it was a good old boys club. But luckily, I had some mainstream people that took me under their arm and began to show me how to do business. So that's what this is all about. It's about doing business. Just do business the way Charlie does business, the way Helen does business. It's just business. When I go to some of these meetings, they want to call me a minority contractor. I say, hold it. I'm just a contractor. Don't call me a minority contractor because I'm here to do the same job that everybody else is doing, and I expect the same pay. And that is how we got to go into 2021. You got to have that attitude. I can go back as far as when they wanted to offer me $30,000 to go in the corner and shut up and don't say nothing. Okay, that was back when this all first started, because quite truly, many of us weren't qualified and didn't have all the resources, the bonding, the financial, all the stuff that's necessary to do business like a big business. And that's what I encourage all diversity companies to do, is let's aspire to be a model, a similarity to the other two people on the panel, that they just do business. They come, they don't, they do business. And that's where I've been able to achieve too. I'm fortunate. And what I want to do is bring everybody that I associate with along those matters, because that's what really matters. It doesn't matter when it gets down to, and I go and I talk to a guy, I say, hey, if I have a way to add to your granddaughter's college fund, would you be interested in talking to me? You think he cares if I'm blue, green, or purple? No. He said, great. How can I add to the college fund? And that's where we have to be as minority businesses.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask, we've had some comments in the chat. People are thoroughly enjoying this, and we are moving into our little breakout room time. So I'm going to wrap up. I want the one question in the chat that I'm going to ask to Charlie, and just before I do that, acknowledge that we could have done this for quite a lot longer because of the Zoom format. We truncated the panel portion. Usually in person, we allot a little more time to it. Clearly, we could have used all that time. So if the governor, there's a question that was in the chat, if the governor does not mandate a new shutdown in the next few weeks, so if there's no mandate, what will your policy be for employees to work remotely or in person? And I have a feeling that a lot of you might be remote anyway. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback. So Charlie, what can you talk about what your policy is for remote or in-person work?
Well, we were going to try to open January 1st until this resurgence. But basically our policy is we want as few people in any office or any warehouse as possible. So continuing to operate the way we have since March. So I don't think that's going to change, but you talked about looking ahead. We think our biggest challenge with this insurgence, and one of the other panelists mentioned it, is labor. I mean, people. We have a lot more people in quarantine. I think someone did the math. We've lost 250, work weeks with people out on quarantine, and if this resurgence continues, and we're already feeling some of that pain. Just not having enough people to get the product out, get it to the store, get it on the shelf, so on and so forth. We think that's going to be the biggest challenge, and we also came to the conclusion that we're not going to stop it from spreading. And like Helen said, we got complacent, and we've reinstituted the discipline that we had early on, but we can't stop it from spreading. But what we can do is prevent it from getting in, and if it gets in, prevent it from spreading within our facilities. And those are our two priorities that we're focusing on right now, stepping up our procedures, temperature checks, cleaning, as Helen talked about. And so our goal is keep it from getting in, and if it does get in, keep it from spreading. Thanks,
Charlie. I've got to close this portion so we can put people into the breakouts, because I said earlier, it's one of the great features of the IEE is giving people a chance to connect with each other and share the learning. And I think the three of you panelists have given a lot of food for thought and shared great experiences. It's been wonderful having you all here with us today. Like I said, we could have used twice as much time because there's a lot to talk about. And you all have really great perspectives and experiences to share. So I want to thank each and every one of you very much for joining us today. Everyone else on the call, we do have some breakouts set up. We've placed you into groups that we feel are appropriate groups for all of you. So I hope you'll stick around for a few more minutes, and I'll let the panelists each say goodbye quickly before we move into the next portion. So thank you all so much, Charlie, Don, and Helen.
Thank you so much, Shelley. First of all, this was an incredible, incredible Family Business Day event. I am just bursting inside, I tell you, listening to these phenomenal, esteemed panelists who did such an amazing job with their robust discussions. So I would like to first thank our panelists for taking time to be with us today fantastic, just fabulous. And I could have listened for another hour or two. So wonderful job. You know, they gave such great nuggets of their honesty and their compassion and their passion, thought-provoking. It was just great. So again, wonderful day, and I'm sure that everyone was able to take something away from this event. I'd like to thank everyone for coming to our 6th annual Virtual Family Business Day. Kudos to you, Shelley, and to all the staff and everyone at IE who made this possible. I'd also like to thank all of our sponsors, as Bob mentioned earlier, PNC Bank, Meyer, Unkevitt and Scott, LLP, UPS, UPMC Health Plan, AT&T, Cohen and Company, Wilkie and Associates, LLP, and Net Experts, and could not forget Sea Level as well. I want to remind everyone about our upcoming program as we look ahead for 2021. Can you believe that's right around the corner? So our Disney Institute presents Disney's approach to business excellence. That will take place on January 14th from 9 to 11. It will be virtual in manner. Registration is open now. And of course, in February, you know, we have our PNC, State of the Economy. We have a great year planned for you. Little hybrid, in person and virtual, but stay tuned to everything that we have to offer. Once again, thank you to everyone for their time today. Have a great day and happy holidays to everyone. Take care.